This is Diana Sullivan in Austin, Texas. Today's video is a dozen hacks for beginners who are learning machine knitting. Here are a lot of little tricks and tips that aren't in your manual that I think will help you along your way. Now, I'm not finished yet. I'm going to have more hacks, some intermediates, and even some for old hands in future videos. When you start to knit, one of the things that you have to do is do something with the yarn end. Now, your manual may suggest that you tie it to the clamp or the table beneath the machine, but when I do that, I forget to remove it, and then it pulls on the knitting and causes me trouble later. Or you might decide that you should clip the yarn on the little clip on the comb. Well, you could do that, but then that'll make it a little harder to get the comb off later. Or maybe you just want to hold the yarn, but if you hold the yarn, now one of your hands is busy, and how are you going to do things like pick out the needles for knitting or hang the comb? You'll have to do everything with one hand, and I like to have both of my hands free. So my favorite way to deal with the end of the yarn, and I do this all the time, and I do it more and more, is just to use an ordinary clothespin, clip it on that yarn. It puts just enough weight on the yarn to help it knit through. So as I continue to knit, it pulls on down. And if I add more colors of yarn, I'll often use a clothespin. Or if I want to form a loop with the yarn, I'll use a clothespin. But now my hands are free. I might want to hold a tool in my hand the whole time I'm knitting because I'm using that tool over and over. And my hands are not busy with the clothespin. Another thing that machine knitters do is they do an open cast on. And this is done when you're doing some waste yarn. It's done when you're working up a swatch quickly, but I don't do it, and I'll show you why. I hardly ever do this, and here's why. You end up with something that falls apart from the bottom. Look at that. This totally unravels from the bottom, and it can be quite a mess. So, I do something different, and it's really quick and easy. The second hack is what I call the shortcut utility cast on. For the shortcut utility cast on, I bring out every other needle instead of all the needles, and I knit one row. Then I hang my comb. Then I bring out the in-between needles, and I keep going. Now, what I have is a cast on that won't unravel. Let's get a closer look at this. If I pull the loose end, what I get is open stitches, but they all have string through them. They will not unravel. This can go through the washing machine if it's a swatch. It's a huge time saver. Now, I've taught this many times at seminars, and I've had people say, oh, that's the same effect you get as a weaving cast on, which is fine, but this works on absolutely every machine, even a machine that doesn't weave, and you don't have to fool with weaving brushes or holding the yarn just right or anything. It's just the two rows. Every other needle, knit a row, bring out the in-betweens, knit a row, and you are cast on. The most common mistake that beginners make, and I made it too, is trying to knit with a yarn that is too big for the machine. So here's a quick rule of thumb. Keep in mind that thinner, smoother yarns knit more easily. So here is a yarn, and I'm wondering if it's too thick for this machine. I lay it on that hook. and the yarn fits completely inside the hook. There isn't any hair or fuzz or eyelashes or lumps from the yarn sticking out of the hook. So I know that that yarn will very likely knit quite well on this machine. Here's another one. I'll just lay it on. Now, no fair pulling on the yarn to make it skinnier. You want to just lay it in there gently and see whether it fits completely in the hook. This is another yarn that will knit beautifully on this machine because it fits completely in the hook. Now how about this? I mean, it looks like it might knit on this machine. Do you see all that fuzz sticking out beyond the tip of that hook? This yarn is going to be trouble. Sometimes you can get away with chenille, but understand that it is very often difficult to knit because of all these hairy things sticking outside the hook. They get hung up. Here's a bumpy yarn. I've got it in a big skein, but anyway, if I put it in, the little thin parts fit okay, but the bigger pieces really don't fit in the hook, and it's likely to give me trouble. And then here's a chenille that has a fairly short eyelash, but it all fits in the hook, and that one happens to knit quite well. So that gives you a rule of thumb, and you really should follow that. You can do a little heavier yarns after you have a lot more experience. But right now, stick to yarns that fit in the hook. My needles are lying very flat against the plate. This machine has a good sponge bar inside it. If you have a worn out sponge bar, your machine will either not knit, or it will bend needles, or it will just generally make you crazy in lots of ways. Let's have a look at what a bad sponge bar looks like. If the sponge bar is bad, the needle might just flip out and not even stop in the typical places. It might just flip in and out. It might also stick up. You can lift it up easily like this, where if the sponge bar is good, it won't lift up easily. Or it might just sit there sticking up. See how that's sticking up? So check that. If you've got a problem with your sponge bar, you'll have great difficulty with knitting, and you can even damage the machine and bend the needles. Now, here is a piece of knitting where you can see some unevenness. Even though it's a smooth, even yarn, you can see horizontal lines that seem to be looser than the rest. There are tight and loose spots all over this sample. And I did something really simple that was wrong, that almost all beginning machine knitters do. What did I do that created all this unevenness? I knitted much too fast. The solution is so very simple. Just take a steady, even speed, and don't go too fast. It's very tempting to go fast because it's so exciting to see how fast the knitting forms. But just take your time and relax. This time my stitches are very, very even because what I did was to just knit slowly and evenly. Another thing that gives beginners problems is figuring out how far to knit at the end of a row. So, suppose I go way outside the row, I push my carriage way over, and now I come in and I go way outside the row. This can cause loops on the edge of your knitting. On the other hand, you don't want to turn around in the middle of a row or before it finishes working on the last needle. So I can't turn around yet. I want to go until I hear the last click. And at that point in time, it's dealt with this last needle. It's cleared that needle. Some machines have a really distinct click. Others are pretty quiet. This one's fairly quiet as far as that last click. But that's it. That's how far I need to go on each side of the knitting. And if you follow that rule, you find that it really does help you with your tension and with avoiding edge loops. The next tip is to learn right away how to do a free pass. A free pass is a time when you have pushed the machine across and not disturbed anything. There are a couple of ways to do it. When the needles are in working position, position B, and they're all in B, you can do a free pass by using your slip. And that'll be an S on your studio wheel, or it'll be the part buttons on your brother. On this brother, if I want to go to the left and not disturb the knitting, I can press the left part button and it'll slip to the left. If I want to go to the right, I push the right part button, it will slip to the right. If I want it to slip both ways, I press both buttons. So I'm going to unthread the machine, which always makes beginners nervous because now you're afraid it'll all fall on the floor. But I can go across and not disturb the knitting. And I can come back, since both part buttons are in, and not disturb the knitting. There are lots of times when you need to get to the other side. Now, another way to do a free pass that you'll find yourself using sometimes is to put the machine in hold. So I slide this from N to H, or on the studio there are Russell levers here that I would change, and it is going to be set to not knit these needles in hold. The needles are fully extended, and I'll unthread it. I'll go across. My knitting is undisturbed, and I'll come back. My knitting is undisturbed. So be sure to learn right away how to do a free pass with your machine. It'll save you lots of time. This is an easy hack. It's my favorite free tool. You can cut up an old gift card or an old credit card or membership card at a sharp angle like this, and you have a wonderful tool for opening every single latch in one pass. It's also a great tool if you need to close every single latch quickly. It works so much better than fiddling with a transfer tool to do this job. Here I am with a transfer tool trying to do that same thing, and it's just much more difficult. But with just a little practice, I think you'll find the card works great. The cut credit card or membership card is also a great little needle pusher, and I hope you'll just cut one up and you'll be so happy to have this simple little tool. I know other people will use a letter opener, but I really like the credit card because it is so thin. Now, this little hack was just a cheap bucket from a Dollar Tree, but it does have the handle on it, and using the handle I can easily hang it from the back of my machine and have an ideal way to keep all my tools within reach. And I just throw them in there and don't worry about it. The tool holder on this machine is just tiny. When I have the knit leader in place like I do right now, I'll hang the bucket off the end of the knit leader right there, and that's handy. When I don't have the knit leader in place, I just have this little bucket handle sticking out, pick up my upper tension unit rod and put it inside that bucket handle, and it hangs right there. So it's a great place to keep a big collection of tools handy. One of the many ways that machine knitting is different from hand knitting is that these needles are all in a fixed position, and they tend to pull the knitting wider. So when you take a piece off the machine, you want to set the stitches. What you do typically is you roll it this way. It wants to roll that way anyhow. And then you pull it vertically. And then you set it down, and it will always be quite a bit narrower than the needles. I had this many needles, but my knitting is just this wide, right here. So that keeps the knitting from being so distorted by being pulled widthwise on the machine. Suppose your machine is hard to push, or suppose you're getting loops along the edges of the knitting. Take the sinker plate off. I'm loosening these 2 screws, and I'm slipping the sinker plate off, and then I turn it over, and I see if the wheels spin. The wheels should spin freely. Your wheels may not look like mine, yours might be another brand, but they should all spin very freely. So if they don't spin freely, use a Phillips, a cross-point screwdriver. Press down on this screw, take it off, and you will typically find a bunch of fuzz under there. Remove the fuzz, put a drop of oil, put it back together, and your wheels will spin. If your wheels don't spin, your machine will not knit very well, and it will be frustrating for you. I find that most people who gave up on machine knitting had one or more things wrong that simply frustrated them and took the joy out of the process. So, make your wheels spin. It's very, very easy to put markers on your knitting. Maybe you'd like to mark the rows. Maybe you wanted to put a marker every so many rows along the edge of the knitting. All you would have to do to mark the edge is bring out the end needle a little bit. Not so far that the latch comes all the way out, but just 3/8 of an inch, just a little. And then hang a loop of yarn on it. Just cut yarn. And then when you knit over it, that yarn is in there and it will stay. You'll be able to find this marker really easily. You can match up your side seams or mark whatever you want. Suppose I wanted to mark the center of my work. I could bring out the center stitch and put the piece of yarn on it. Don't knit it through, just lay it on there. And now it's marked. It'll stay until I deliberately pull it out. But when I pull it out, it won't do any harm to the knitting. So you can mark the sides, the center, anywhere that you want to mark. It's just a really easy way to mark a spot for future use. For instance, maybe you're going to apply a patch pocket or sew a button there, or maybe sew the eye on a toy. Whatever you're going to do, it's easily marked. So get used to using yarn markers. And here I will show you how easily these are taken out. I didn't knit it through, I just laid it in the needle. So when I want it out, I just give it a tug and it comes right out and doesn't disturb anything.